You're listening to Pathways and Means, a podcast that inspires and shows people how to tap into their creative spirit. We sit down with leaders and makers in every industry to talk about their process, what inspires them, and about how to build incredible things with the power of creativity. The future belongs to the creators, so come join us. This is Pathways and Means.
So, SJ, I thought that for today's podcast, it might be fun to touch on a topic that's pretty close to both of our hearts. And,
I wonder what that topic is going to be, man.
Well, I think that topic is going to be hip-hop.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so, I love talking about hip-hop.
Hip-hop is something that you and I chop it up about every day. I think it's fair to say every day.
And I just have to say something. We're talking about this. I mean, people just don't know how deeply rooted you are in the hip hop culture. I mean, it's amazing.
You wouldn't look at me and think, that I would be a person who is as deep into hip hop as I am. But then I hit you with a few references and you realize, he's actually in the culture. It's not like he's a guy that just decided he was going to learn a few bars here and there from some artists that people respect. No, I mean, it's really in him. It lives in him, and it's always amazing. So I'm glad that we're touching on this today. Well, I think we should go ahead and plant our flag right early on, first thing, because hip hop means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Right.
I first want to just establish that hip hop is the single most successful, wide-reaching art form in human history. It's changed absolutely everything since it came on the scene. It's touched every facet of entertainment and life. It bleeds into the headlines. It bleeds into how we talk with one another. It's influenced movies. It's influenced art. So even if you're a person listening to this and you're like, well, I don't want to hear some podcast about hip hop. I don't even like hip hop. This is a podcast more about the culture and the impact. And hip hop might be the best example of the potential power of a creative enterprise or an artwork or an art style and its ability to impact the world. Because I don't think any kind of art, any kind of expression has ever impacted the world so completely as hip hop has. Do you think that's fair to say?
I definitely would say that's fair to say. I remember, I came up in the culture. I was born in 74, so I have been here since hip hop has began. I remember before they would even play hip hop on the radio. So I remember the first time I heard something on the radio, but I mean, hip hop is world culture. It has done so much for so many people. I mean, it inspires, it builds confidence. Hip hop has always been about standing out and being outstanding. It's never been about just being a brick in the wall and belonging, but it's also been a whole lot about just supporting people to do what you do. Do what you do. You do not have to follow the trail that was laid before you, but to be a trailblazer.
Absolutely.
And to blaze your own path.
I think as we get into the discussion, it might be good for us to sort of establish precisely what it is we're talking about. So this is a simple question, but it's a really hard question. But I think if anybody has the answer, it might be you. What is hip hop? There's been people who have gave all kind of definitions to it, to where even I've heard hip hop is higher infinite power healing our people. They broke it down like that. Hip hop is definitely a culture. It's how we can actually give information that gets passed down generation to generation through storytelling and things like that. But it's been around forever. So I would say, to me, hip hop is a way, just another vehicle to be able to express what already lives in you. Absolutely. I heard from LP, the producer and one of the MCs in Run the Jewels, he was in an interview and he gave this answer where they were sort of talking about some of the samples that he had done and maybe sort of either criticizing or sort of clowning on him at least. And he pointed out, we take sounds that are familiar to you and flip them. It's called hip hop. You take what's hip and you make it hop. So.
And with that, so we break the two words down for hip hop. Being hip means what's good, what's dope, what's tight. People look to you to see what's hip. Hop is a movement, so it's a hip movement. It's the end movement, and it's
they look to hip hoppers to see what's good, what's the next slang, what's the new movement, and keeping it moving, So hip hop, that's another way that you can kind of break it down. But really, it is a vehicle to be able to express and articulate what you're feeling on the inside.
I would hate for anybody to think of hip hop or rap music or whatever you want to call it as just sort of another musical genre in a sea of musical genres. You talk about cultural impact, and this is something that I think is really important, especially for our audience, because we're talking about how that fourth category in the creativity model, connection, that's
right.
The part of creativity that can change the world. And what type of art has connected with the world more than hip hop has? You look at like the Beatles era of the 60s and the Rolling Stones, then you look at sort of what we know as classic rock in the 70s
right.
afterwards. It's like these things were, worldwide phenomena, but they had their very specific niches still within their kind of different subsets of the culture. But even if you look at something and it doesn't immediately scream hip hop to you, the whole characterization, like advertising, commercials, even just how movies are scored, that's influenced directly by hip hop in a way that no other kind of art form has. So it's the sort of thing that has this very unique power to leave its thumbprint on every other kind of art.
Yes, it adds to every brand. When you look at commercials nowadays, I was just talking, I think I was talking to you about it. It's like, I was in the car and I heard Frank Red Hots. It said, Frank Red Hots, I put that on everything. That's hip hop. You know what I'm saying? You've got the McDonald's commercials. You've got everything you see advertising hip hop. The Super Bowl.
Drake is on TV selling Sprite in their commercials. And the commercial is him in the booth too.
In the booth. Yes. And that's the thing. I also remember when I used to be attacked for being a hip hopper and when I was young, because they people would make fun of the human beatbox and Dougie Fresh because, it was a pull up, and so you'd hear people do that stuff and they'd make fun of hip hop, and it was a trend, it was a fad, it wasn't gonna last. This was back in like 1981, so fast forward to 2021 and hip hop is, if you listen to some of the country music nowadays, they're rapping in country music. I want
to take a quick sidebar on this one actually, because as much as I am a cheerleader for hip hop and I love that it's all over the place, man, it sure ruined country music. Because I've got to establish my point here. Because when you turn on country radio, you're not going to hear Johnny Cash or Merle Haggard or anything like that. And it's like, yeah, I know we're talking about hip hop, but I also like country music. But it's like, what in the world is Florida Georgia Line doing with rap verses in their songs? It's like they're trying so hard. But that again is me tipping the cap to hip hop, because even country wants to be hip hop.
It's crazy right now, but that's where we're at. You see the effect of hip hop everywhere. There's certain people you can tell if they're not really in the culture, because they might still use words like diss and stuff like that, and you'll see that happen quite often. It's like they're reaching, it's something, but
once in a while you'll get somebody, like some kind of political figure or something, who will go on Breakfast Club or Hot 97 or something like that, and like they'll just pick whatever the headline is, and they're like, yeah, that new Drake album is, I've always loved that rap music. Oh, totally. And it's just, that's something I think that's again, it's a situation where hip hop is so big that even people who are out of it recognize that to be cool, you got to be in it. And second of all, the reason why that doesn't work is because so much of hip hop and hip hop culture is about realness, and it's about being your authentic self. And it's like you can just smell the phony immediately. Like even among artists, among people talking about rap, it's like if they're not really about it, there are enough details that you've got to get right that just like people who are into hip hop culture will understand, that you can just tell when they're not about it.
Yeah, no, it's true. And and when you get into hip hop, you have a lot of different mind states. So I'll say, I'm from the golden era. I was born in 1974, April 9th. Aries, for all y'all out there.
We should point out that while you and I are both proponents of the hip hop culture, we came at it in very different ways and different styles and different eras. Because I was born in 1995, and I lived in a suburb, and I didn't know anything about hip hop until I was watching some Adult Swim when I was like 13.
Okay.
And they had those Adult Swim bumps. They would play little beats in between during the commercial breaks. And like, you know, my little middle school brain was like, what is this? You know, and then I bought the game Tony Hawk Underground on PlayStation 2.
Okay.
And they had The World Is Yours by Nas on there.
Oh yeah.
And I never looked back. That was it. But so you're coming from like the golden era, and I think that this is getting into what I've heard you affectionately term as sort of the left wing, right wing of hip hop. So why don't you explain what that is a little bit?
You know, I mean, when it comes down, you know, everybody knows politics. You know, you got the right wingers, the left wingers. Well, you have the same thing in hip hop, left and right wing, and you got hip hop purists, and then we'll just say, you know, hip hop liberals. And basically, the purists are the ones who are like, you know, if it ain't Big Daddy Kane, if it ain't Rakim, if it ain't Chuck D, you know what I'm saying? If it ain't Grandmaster Flash, whatever, I don't want to hear it. There's some people who only still listen to 80s and 90s hip hop. They won't put nothing else in their deck. That's what it is. And there's no sway in them. But then you got the different people who are all about, you know, the Little Yachty's, you know, I guess you'd say, you know, even the Drakes, the new generation of hip hop.
The Baby,
the Baby, Little Baby.
All those babies.
Ain't raised his baby. Got a baby on the way. So, you know, so mumble rappers is what a lot of they call them. A lot of them mumble rappers and everything like that. So there is no bipartisan anything happening. Nobody is reaching across the aisle. You know, so it's just they're complaining about, you know, they don't spit lyricism anymore. It's not real hip hop and whatever. But, you know, even back in the day, you know, I mean, you got people like Das Effects. Bum stickity bum hum. I got the rumpa pum pum, but I could fee fire your foes diggity dum. Here I come. You know, what was that? You know what I'm saying? But so there's some people who will say that's real hip hop, but then, you know, Migos or anybody else isn't. So I just think we have to actually look at the creativity involved because where the overdubs have went to, the sound effects, even the production of things are different.
Well, and you know, it's admirable that you've come to that conclusion, and I don't mean to bring up a painful past or anything, but I know that you've flirted with being a hater in your time.
Oh, I was a real hater. Now, when I say I was a hater because if you was not coming with them lyrics, so I've came a long way to get to this point because I was a hip hop purist and there was no reaching across the aisle.
Well, and you know, it's let me just own my stereotype for a moment. White guys who are hip hop fans are like known as like the snobs as far as like lyricism, and I get it. I'm a big fan of like, you know, really heady lyrical hip hop. I'm a huge fan of that. But I think that especially when we're like juxtaposing this with discussions about creativity and people's specific art and what it does for them. Like, think about this. The same people now who say, oh, well, that's not NWA, so that's trash, because it's like it was good back then. Man, when they were coming up, their parents were talking trash on NWA, saying it didn't sound like the music they were listening to when they were growing up. And you know what? Someday, I'm going to be looking at my 16-year-old kid listening to some new artist that he really likes, and I'm going to say, oh, this is trash. This doesn't sound anything like that good rap music I know about. That will happen. So it's a matter of generations will always defend the music that they have ties to from their youth. Because we've talked about how music cannot be separated from the emotions that it's connected to. I heard this song when I was feeling this way. You know, this was the soundtrack of my summer when I was going through this life change or whatever. And it's like you can't separate those things.
Yeah, you said it. Music is a calendar. I mean, you can remember the first time you heard a song, the year, what it even smelled like outside, and everything like that. I mean, it's and you know, it is very important to point out the creativity of what's going on in the genre now.
I can just tell you, you know, it would have been, I guess, 2014, because I was a freshman in college. That was the year Yeezus came out by Kanye West, and genuinely, I hope this doesn't sound dumb, but I imagine people know what this feels like. The song Blood on the Leaves feels like me waiting in the cold for my bus to take me to my classes freshman year. And I'm 26, so that's been a while.
Right.
But I never thought of it in that way until you said it that way. It's like, it feels like the cold that album does.
Yeah.
It's like music is that personal for all of us, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, and when you even said the soundtrack of your life.
Yep.
That's really what it is. And I want to get back into this hater thing because I want people to know.
I'd love to hear more about your hater
me
status.
being a hater.
Yes.
So I was real pessimistic at one point in my life because I felt I was supposed to make it into the industry at an early age when I was doing stuff, the late 90s, doing stuff with Cash Money, Lil Wayne, and a lot of the people who were coming up at that time. But like I said before, the guy that was behind me was a big dope dealer here in the town. And when he got popped and did 10 flat in the feds, things changed for me. And, even my surroundings, it was time for life-changing things. But if you was not top-notch lyricist, or you weren't a top-notch lyricist, I wasn't fooling with you. But there was an event that happened. Method Man was on Hot 97, and Waka Flocka Flame's name came up. Meth went in and he was talking crazy about Waka Flocka, how he don't even need to have the mic, he can't rap, this, that. So what happened the next day, 97, called Waka and got him on the line, and he was like, Method Man's a legend, Wu-Tang's legends, and me, I was a goon, I'm doing bad things in the streets. Now I'm doing things differently and making money from music. So, I don't have anything bad to say about Meth. They're legends, and I wish that they would just even help me with some of the stuff I got going on instead of attacking me. And when that hit me, it broke me completely down because I would have been like Meth, saying different stuff like that about rappers who weren't as good lyrically. And Meth ended up coming back on 97 the next day and called Waka, apologized, and said, he was out of line for that. That changed me.
Kind of stick up for my man Flocka. The song "No Hands" is a classic. That's high school.
I mean,
for me.
Waka's had a lot of them. Go hard in the paint.
Man.
He's been doing his overdubs.
But I
crazy.
feel it though. It's like hip hop. This is one of the blessings and the curses of being so huge. Hip hop is such a wide umbrella that it's very hard to compare No Hands to Wu-Tang Clan.
Right.
And it's like if 36 Chambers is your measure of excellence, then then like some modern sort of like quasi trap music with the sort of heavy reverb on it, you're gonna be like, well, that's not even close. But this is something that I think is important, especially for the people I will affectionately call old heads. You're not one of those. I just want to be as clear about that as I can. But depending on the definition. But when you see people who are saying, oh, this ain't like the hip hop I had when I was growing up, you're not the target audience anymore. You're not. It's for a different generation. And again, it's like, and I'm a young enough guy that I like a whole lot of mumble rap. I'm a big fan of that kind of thing, that sort of like heavy trap, especially like the Dirty South influences of it, like coming out of Atlanta and stuff like that. I think it's a dope sound. But it's like, I recognize that, even now, like I said, I'm 26, even now, some of the newer music that comes out, I just don't feel it. It's just not as, it just doesn't bite the same kind of way as like music did even a few years ago. But I'm recognizing that's not because the music is worse. That's because I'm getting older, and you can't deny the young people in the culture, because our culture celebrates youth.
Right.
You can't deny the young people in the culture their moment to establish their watermark on the time.
I agree completely with you on that. And I have I have two children. Both of them are grown. One's 26, one's 18, and that was helpful for me coming up because it's one of these things. It's impossible to inspire and insult at the same time. Or when you're insulting somebody, you're not going to inspire them. And this is how we do it. Parents will come and we'll talk to our kids about the music they're listening to is trash. This artist is trash. You need to listen to this artist. You need to listen to this artist. So immediately they're already blocking you out because you just attacked their taste in music.
This is the thing. And like you and I, in our discussions about creativity and in some of the products that we've been building here at CPM, we cover a lot about metaphor and art's relationship to mental health. And now this might seem like I'm making too much out of this, but I really don't think I am. I think that kind of thing, that sort of just like casually denigrating people's taste in music or their taste in art, can be really, really harmful. And the reason for that is, like we said, I'm associating that Kanye West album with just like some benign memory about like waiting for class or something like that. But it's like, people will take the songs that they're listening to when their parents are sick, or, the songs that they're listening to when they're dealing with depression, when they're really low in their life. We talk about metaphor, and we talk about how music and art is a way for us to externalize our pain. So, it's no longer, this song about a breakup is like what I'm going through. It's, no, this song is my experience. So it might be casual, upon first listen. I mean, we've all been through this, where it's like you think that there's a song that's the best song ever, and you show it to a friend, and they're like, "Oh, that was whack. What are you doing?" You know, and like they might start laughing at it, and it's like that hurts so deep. And it can be even worse than that when people associate music with a very deeply held feeling or a deeply held past trauma. So I would just say, you're allowed to not like whatever song you want. Like, that's totally fine. But when people are sharing art with you that means something to them, I'd be a little bit more careful about casually denigrating it.
No, I agree with you completely, because there's a lot of music we listen to get us through. And it's like I tell people this all the time. A lot of times people are trying to figure out ways to talk to their children or talk to the youth at all. But one of the best ways to get them to open up is talk playlist. Ask them, man, what's on your playlist right now? What is some of the hottest songs that you're listening to right now? And you will start to be able to get a glimpse into their lives on some stuff, and they'll open up. And that's a big thing. That's another thing. There's music for every occasion, because music is an atmosphere.
Right.
You're not going to find too many people doing a drive-by listening to Kirk Franklin. It's probably going to be something to get them a little bit more pumped up and, arouse the rebel within them. That was one of the things that, Tupac had. He's able to arouse different things within us, whether he's talking Dear Mama or whether he's talking Hit 'Em Up. So hip hop is just, there's so many different ways that you can get your message out there. And also it's a way to be able to distribute information and ideas quicker than any other route, because the way people can spit these lyrics and these words, it might take 5 minutes to spit out, I don't know, a certain number of words, but if you do it in a hip hop form, you might be able to condense that, because some people, they do that fast rap.
Right. Well, all right. I mean, all that sounds great. I think we're wrapping up on time, but it's a podcast about hip hop. We're about tough questions. This isn't about, this isn't like the comfort zone. I need your top 3 albums.
Oh my goodness. Top 3 albums. Let me say this, because
this is how you know you're dealing with a real hip hop head, because he's trying to qualify his answer before he even gives it, because he knows how ravenous the hip hop community could be.
It is so hard for me to be able to give 3 albums, but I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the effect that Tretch from Naughty by Nature had in the rap game. Okay, this is somebody, when you hear people's top 5s and top 10s, you seldom hear him in it, and I want to talk about the impact of his style. I mean, he did so much, and it's like, even just, he started out Uptown Anthem. You can smoke a spliff on a cliff, but there's still no mountain high enough. You know what I'm saying? And then he went on wide enough to touch, and then he got to doing his old choppy style. But I believe his style has had so much influence, because if you haven't been to the school of Tretch, you got a whole lot more. You ain't ready. You're not going to be ready. I mean, some of the top-notch MCs, people from Eminem, to people like Snoop. I mean, there's people like Redman. I mean, Tretch came out, I believe I was in high school, because it was my senior year, because I took OPP, and the other song, it was another song that had an instrumental that I ended up looping and doing some stuff to. But I think when people talk about top 10 MCs, sometimes they get to thinking about albums and how much stuff they've put out. But people in hip hop bite heavy, and they bite styles heavy. Tretch had an original style when he came out, and I just don't think people give him enough flowers for the impact he had.
Right.
And so I'm just saying, I wanted to put something out there that might not be a big popular opinion or you don't hear about it much, but Tretch needs his flowers.
Can't help but notice you did not give me your top 3
I did
albums.
not give you my top 3 albums because, you know, that's one of the things I've learned, especially through social media and different things like that, because there's so many different things that you can forget. And there's so many albums that are out there. And the thing is, it's like different things change with time and stuff like that. But I mean, you know, of course, The Chronic would have to be something that would be up in a top 3 albums. I mean, because of the impact that it had. You know, any of the early Kanye West albums, I mean, changed the culture.
See, I had my top 3 all together, and then you mentioned Kanye West.
Man, I mean,
now I got to rethink my whole list.
That's the whole thing. And see, that's what happens when you get to talking about some of these albums. And of course, you know, 36 Chambers, Wu-Tang. I mean, the very first joint that came out, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Then you get to thinking about, like Nas's first album, you know, I mean, just a crazy classic. You Only Built for Cuban Links, you know, we still back on some Wu-Tang type stuff, but then UGK, you know, I mean, it was Tell Me Something Good. I mean, back when Pimp C.
Maybe it ought to be like top 3 for the region. It's like you could have top 3 from New York, you could have top 3 West Coast, and maybe top 3 in the South.
And then we talking NWA. I mean, that album changed the whole culture. I mean, it changed so much. I mean, there's just so many people that could be mentioned. You know, Eric B. and Rakim.
It was a mean question. I'm not going to hold it to 3. All right, we're all out of time, but appreciate the conversation, brother. Talk to you again soon.
All right, brother.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found today's episode informative and inspiring. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to Pathways and Means wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to learn more about CPM and how to grow creatively into the future, visit creativepathwaysandmeans.com, or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok, where we post daily content and connect and engage with creators like you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.